In a period of just a couple of years, Hasbulla has gone from a niche, semi-viral TikToker to an instantly recognizable worldwide celebrity. People are absolutely fascinated by him because, well, nobody's quite sure. What he does can't really be described. He seems to just show up and attract massive amounts of attention by virtue of just existing. The way he sounds and looks makes him interesting at his core, and people are enamored seeing him interact with the world around him. And of course, it doesn't hurt that he's collaborated with massive celebrities like Mark Wahlberg, Shaquille O'Neal, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Mike Tyson. And besides being a full-time social media influencer, his current job title is being an ambassador for the biggest MMA organization in the world, the UFC. Having over 8 million Instagram followers as of 2024, he is incredibly popular, but at the same time, somewhat polarizing as well. Some view him as the absolute pinnacle of entertainment, and others dislike him due to the sheer fact that they don't understand why he's popular. But overall, even his most dedicated haters view him as a harmless meme at worst. But there are some pretty dark qualities to Hasbulla and how he operates that most people, particularly in the West, aren't aware of, and in this video, I'll go over exactly what they are. And yes, I'm going to talk about the cat thing, so calm down and stop typing. According to Wikipedia, Hasbulla Magomedovich Magomedov was born on July 7th of 2002. And while there's universal agreement on the year, there is some discrepancy over which month he was actually born in. Most sources outside of Wikipedia pin his birthday somewhere around January or March. Similarly, there's also discrepancy over where he was born. Wikipedia states that he hails from Dagestan's capital, Makhachkala. However, other sources say that he was born in and lives in a village called Novy Hushet. And there's a couple of things that support that. First of all, it's been said that he's from the same village as Islam Makhachev, and it's a known fact that Islam's family moved to Novy Hushet when he was young. Hasbulla's Instagram handle is also Hasbulla Hushetsky, and Hushetsky means from Hushet. Ultimately, it's all semantics, as Dagestan is a tiny place and all the villages and cities are in very close proximity to one another. Located in the northern Caucasus region of the Russian Federation that also includes Chechnya, Ingushetia, and North Ossetia, it only has 3.2 million people. To put that into perspective, just the city of New York alone has a population of 8.4 million people. Hasbulla belongs to one of the root nationalities of Dagestan, which means that his family tree can be traced to the first people that settled there. The majority of Dagestan's population consists of several tribes that came from the same exact people who shared the same root language. And originally, they only identified themselves as tribes to account for the differences in regional dialects. But during the early Soviet times, when the government practiced a divisive geopolitical strategy of artificially creating new ethnic groups, some tribes began to consider themselves a different set of people altogether. And over time, Russian became the overarching language spoken by mostly everyone, and these days not every tribe speaks the original dialect of Dagestan proficiently. Currently, there are 6 original nationalities: the Avar, Andi, Didoy, Nodiri, Lizgin, Dargin, and Lats. Hasbulla's family belongs to the Dargin people. Initially, Hasbulla was a perfectly healthy baby, but at the age of 5, his parents grew concerned as he seemed to have stopped growing. After taking him to the doctor, it was discovered that he had a genetic anomaly that presented itself as a growth hormone deficiency. While the name of his specific disease has never been disclosed, most likely it's pituitary dwarfism, where the lack of growth hormone completely halts the physical development, but the facial features and proportions are left unaffected. The conditions linked to growth hormone are difficult to identify because they don't always present in the same way. In some cases, the development stops extremely early, and in others, it continues almost up until puberty. For example, 48-year-old Andy Milonakis, who has a similar condition, has the physical development of a 13 or 14-year-old boy. But at 3'4" and around 40 pounds, Hasbulla's development stopped at the level of the average 5-year-old. He has the outward appearance, size, and voice of a toddler. He also has a twin sister who seems to have the same condition as he does. More on that later. Hasbulla's childhood was very similar to any other kid growing up in the overwhelmingly Muslim Dagestan. He played with his friends and family and was a staunchly religious Sunni Muslim who prayed several times a day and studied the Quran. The only irregular thing about his childhood was the fact that he wasn't able to participate in Dagestan's culture of sports and athletics with the other kids his age. Instead, he was placed in Islamic school, which he absolutely hated. Being confined to a building and forced to rigidly study for hours, he compared it to a prison.
What do you hate about school?
Yeah, what were the bad memories?
To, що
And after 4 years, he finally had enough and convinced a friend to drive 200 kilometers to help him escape. And being back at home, he fell back into the routine of hanging out with his friends, praying, and going on social media for entertainment just like many other people his age. And one day when he was just relaxing at home and eating strawberries, he decided to record a short video and put it on TikTok. The video was simply of him eating a strawberry and calling it bomb, but it instantly went viral because of his appearance. People were fascinated by what seemed to be a toddler talking to the camera with adult inflections about how much he loved strawberries. Local bloggers and businesses quickly took notice and decided to capitalize on his fame by featuring him in their videos. A lot of it was food-related marketing where he would use his signature catchphrase to call whatever he was eating bomb.
Burger bomba. Burger.
He formed a tight-knit circle of supporters that would follow him around and encourage him to post and collaborate more and more. He also began to be known as Hasbik, which is a softened version of his name. Calling Hasbulla Hasbik is akin to calling somebody named Chris, Chrissy. Hasbulla has actually went on record saying that he doesn't like being called this at all, but it was easier to remember and it increased his marketability. And this increased marketability caught the attention of another viral star from neighboring Chechnya, Ashab Tamayev, also known as the Chechen Hulk. Tamayev's claim to fame was essentially the fact that he had a huge neck. And for those that love to comment about how big my neck is on all of my videos, this is what an actual huge neck looks like. My neck is perfect. Alright, Tamayev is technically a 2-0 MMA fighter, but most of his following was built around the way that he looks, and he hasn't competed since 2019. He turned his status as a meme into a YouTube channel with several million subscribers, and seeing similar potential in Hasbik, he decided to reach out and get on it early. The two will go on to collaborate on several different videos that would get millions of views, usually stuff like vlogs that feature Hasbulla talking about himself and his opinions on things, but also stuff like Hasbulla being tied to a bunch of balloons to see how far he could fly. But they really hit gold when Tamayev asked Hasbik to hit him in the face as a joke, and that became the thing instantly. That was it. To this day, the world just can't get enough of Hasbulla hitting people with his little baby fist. Steven Spielberg with his blockbuster productions, piece of shit evidently compared to Hasbulla. But not surprisingly, when you start to get attention on that level, there's bound to be some negativity mixed in with all of the support. And this affected Hasbulla's family a lot. His parents, being quiet and private people, even asked him to delete his Instagram. But everything was already set in motion, and soon Tamayev saw an opening to really turn Hasbik into a household name. The country of Azerbaijan had a singer and media personality of a similar age and who presented with the same genetic disorder as Hasbulla. And being that they faced the same exact struggles growing up and had so much to relate on, Tamayev came to the natural conclusion of, you gotta make him fight. And I guess it says a lot about us as a society that everybody really wanted to see it. The 35-minute so-called pre-fight press conference, which is really just Tamayev sitting in between the two and egging them on, is still the most viewed video on his channel with 20. Due to the overwhelming interest, the fight initially seemed to be on an inevitable trajectory to happening. But people around Hasbulla began telling him that Tamayev may have been seriously underpaying him. Hasbulla initially agreed to do the fight for 1 million rubles, which equals to about $1,000. Becoming convinced that he was greatly underselling himself, he changed his price to 20 million rubles, which equals to about $220,000. This drew some criticism from people online who thought that he was outpricing himself and said things like, for that kind of money, he should have been fighting Fedor Emelianenko. But I disagree. I think that's more than a fair salary for being one half of an event that likely would have generated close to 8 figures or maybe even broke that number. And reports of what Hasbik was making at the time vary, but it seems like his rate to star in Tamayev's videos was somewhere between $300 and $1,500. Not only does that seem incredibly low in general, the high end of that rate is higher than what he agreed to for the fight, which obviously would have become the most viewed video by a mile, so the math just isn't mathing. But the thing you need to understand about Tamayev is, even though he looks like a meathead, he's no dummy. In school, he was an outstanding student, even receiving a gold medal upon graduation, which in Chechnya is akin to becoming valedictorian. He was especially proficient in the subject of chemistry, which makes sense, I suppose, since he seems to have started doing experiments on himself. His childhood goal has always been to be famous, and he consciously adjusted his appearance to draw as much attention as possible. After realizing that his neck was out of proportion to his already massive body, he decided to start taking pictures while tilting his head back to accentuate it even even more, in hopes that it would look freaky enough to make him go viral, and it obviously worked. And as soon as he got the attention he wanted, he immediately jumped into action to monetize it, creating a huge social media following, which is honestly very impressive and shows that he has a natural talent for marketing, especially considering that he's only 22 years old, only 1 year older than Hasbulla. But being gifted doesn't make him honorable, and he's definitely not above doing things in an underhanded way. And for evidence of that, you don't have to look any further in the fact that he claims that his clearly enhanced physique is 100% natural in order to sell workout programs to impressionable teens. And people that interact with him often claim that he has a very materialistic and arrogant vibe about him. Image and appearance is clearly very important to him, as he's often seen on camera bragging about his cars, his clothes, and how much money he makes. And naturally, this is done in a way that helps attract desperate people who want to achieve a similar lifestyle to his programs in order for him to monetize it further. And he does a lot to keep up the appearance of success without overspending to do so. Like, for example, replacing the front of his Mercedes in the chop shop in order to claim that it was a newer model. And at least on one occasion when he was visiting Dagestan, his arrogance got him in trouble. When he was shopping at a popular market, he decided to block several cars in with a sports car. And a man that spent 40 minutes looking for him and needed to urgently leave decided to teach him a lesson when Tamayev wouldn't apologize. He beat his ass. And when Tamayev attempted to solicit sympathy from the general public online, he once again offered him a fair one-on-one fight, which the Chechen Hulk refused. Anyway, this is a very long-winded way of getting to my point, and my point is, based on his character and the facts, I do believe 100% that Tamayev was taking advantage of Hasbulla. And due to all the drama surrounding his fight with Abdurozik, the two had a falling out, and almost immediately Hasbulla was presented with a much better opportunity when he was flown out by UFC president Dana White to UFC 267 in Abu Dhabi. There he was able to meet and get pictures with Dana White and Khabib, and was even brought into the octagon by Islam after his win against Dan Hooker. He even had a brawl in the audience with Abdurozik, just a full UFC experience. Now in response to this, Tamayev claimed that he was the mastermind behind the meeting, and Dana White personally paid him $1.5 million for Hasbulla's fighting rights. But this has very little possibility of being true, as it's been widely reported that Hasbulla and Tamayev never had any type of contractual agreement. In reality, Hasbulla signed a 5-year contract with the UFC as a brand ambassador and not a fighter, reportedly receiving $1 million per year. See, bantamweights, you're not too small to be marketable after all. Get your shit together, guys. After getting signed by the UFC, Hasbulla received a huge promotional boost. He began appearing around Khabib and became exposed to Western audiences through collaboration with several different big celebrities and brands, like the Nelk Boys, the Full Sun Podcast, Caleb Presley, and of course Mike Tyson, who, well, within the span of just 1 year, Hasbulla's financial situation did a complete 180. Forbes reported that he made $2 million in 2023 alone. Meanwhile, Tamayev was still marketing the Abdurozik fight as if it was still on schedule to happen. He even tried to reconnect with Hasbulla, making a big show of offering him more and more money, but it was to no avail. The relationship went south for good when Hasbulla insulted the Chechen Hulk with something so foul that I don't even want to say it, but I'll do it for the sake of the video. He told the world that Tamayev's Lamborghini was rented. I'm not even joking, this really pissed Tamayev off, and it's a major part of the reason why they're no longer friends. But as goofy as that was, Hasbulla does have a side to him that the Western media doesn't get to see. He is not as he appears and can be downright nasty. A lot of people had a chuckle when he named one of his chickens Conor McGregor, essentially calling McGregor a chicken. Thing is, he didn't call him a chicken the way the insult is perceived in America. Calling somebody a chicken in Russian is pretty foul because it's a slang term for somebody in prison that gets passed around sexually. And I don't know if Conor knew that, but keeping that in mind, his response of saying that he wanted to punt Hasbulla on Twitter is pretty appropriate. And the fact that Hasbulla proceeded to invite McGregor to Abu Dhabi to meet him face to face, implying that he wanted to fight him, I mean, you know, stop it. This also wouldn't be the only time on record where he recklessly threatened somebody. When the video of his twin sister at a doctor's appointment hit the internet, he proceeded to threaten the doctor's life to his millions of Instagram followers. And while he did publicly apologize when it was found out that the doctor was not the one that released the video, it still put her in a tremendous amount of danger. And the more media appearances he made, the more he began to be perceived as arrogant, as he seemed to enjoy making jokes at others' expenses. When he appeared on popular Russian show Что будет дальше, or What Comes Next, he spent some time calling one of the hosts brainless, seemingly seemingly in an attempt to make a joke, but it made him visibly uncomfortable. He also appeared on the news with a group of his friends when they were arrested for reckless driving for doing donuts on the highway on their way to a wedding.
За что вас доставили в полк ДПС?
Поехали на свадьбу другу, и на трассе, была трасса пустая, и начали крутить машину.
Свадебные эмоции, чуть.
Да.
Now this doesn't really seem like a big deal, but it played into the perception that people were beginning to have of him of being arrogant and having a disregard for law. Another host of What Comes Next recalled a story when Hasbulla refused to buckle up when he picked him up in his car and pressured him into picking up speed. He comedically imagined what would happen if he were to be forced to suddenly hit the brakes. He also singled out a professional fighter hailing from Dagestan, Gaji Navruzov, aka Gaji Avtomat, for his tattoo. Not only are tattoos prohibited by Islam in general, Hasbulla perceived that specific tattoo as the Eye of Dajjal. In Islam, Dajjal is a figure similar to Christianity's Antichrist. As a result of this, Gaji received a multitude of threats and was confronted in the streets as well.
Они себя преподносят как религиозные. Зачем они меня оскорбляют? Зачем задевают? Я им что сделал плохое? Это моя татуировка, моя защита на моем теле. Она не несет вреда.
He also called for violence against a plane of Israeli refugees that landed in Dagestan, going as far as saying that their hotels should be set on fire. The airport was mobbed by a group of people carrying bats and axes, and in total 20 people were hurt, with at least one placed in an intensive care unit. Hasbulla ended up deleting the post, but was still written up by the police for extremism. And of course, we have the infamous cat video where Hasbulla pulls his pet's ear and punches it repeatedly. In spite of the outrage from all the animal lovers, his view of the situation was that he was simply giving the cat a little bit of discipline. And as messed up as that video was, I believe that he did what he did out of ignorance and not so much malice. I think that he was brought up believing that animals respond positively to that sort of treatment, viewing it almost like spanking a child. In some ways, I believe Hasbulla is a victim of becoming too big too quickly, and for some, the initial fascination quickly mutated into hate watching. There are some valid criticisms, of course. He did get a big head and he is arrogant, and some of his views can be perceived as being that of an extremist. But he is a product of his environment. Not every nation and country shares our exact Western ideals, so he should probably be judged within the context of where he's from, because if not, I can think of a bunch of views that he probably holds that would get him canceled immediately if he was an American celebrity, and I think you know exactly what I'm trying to say. Ultimately, just like most celebrities, Hasbulla is as good or as bad as you want to make him. It all depends on which parts of his persona are relevant to you as a person. And that right there is the real dark truth behind Hasbulla.